Instead, she left, didn't she, Preston? So, well, aren't you glad to be in God's house? I am thankful for this. It's good to have Luis back. Have I said good? It's good to have you back, Luis? He's our fellow from Guatemala, is that right? Yeah, and he came all the way from Guatemala just to be with us at church. Look at Charlie Hicks over here come sneaking in there. That's good. Well, hey, something we try to do often here at Providence is we try to memorize God's Word together. I don't know about you, but I need the accountability. It's good to have somebody say, how you doing on that verse? Or can you help me with that verse? And so for the next month through the end of May, this is an easy one. Nobody should have a problem. We're going to memorize Psalm 27:1, which says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? That's a good verse for these days, isn't it? And so let's see. Colton, you look too relaxed again. Come on up here, buddy. And let's see. Keisha, you go over get that side. If you want one of these to memorize with us, if they raise your hand, they'll get them to you, okay? Be sure to get the middle section. That's the I'm not sure what you call that middle section today. While they're doing that, if you have your Bibles, turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4. 1 Timothy chapter 4. And we are going to be finish out chapter 4 today, okay? For those of you who are visitors or have been with us for a while, we almost always going through a book of the Bible, and right now we're in 1 Timothy. Just finished up chapter 3. Last week started chapter 4, and we're going to find out some interesting things. While they're doing that, and while you're trying to find 1 Timothy chapter 4, let me put a plug in for tonight. At 6 o'clock we meet in the fellowship hall for a kind of a more casual time of Bible study around tables and things like that, so you can take notes and have input and things like that. And we're going to start a several-week series, not sure how long it is, right, on spiritual warfare. How many of you have ever done much of a study on spiritual warfare? Let me see your hands. All right, just a handful of you, okay. How many of you, it's been a long time since you did? Let's see your hands. About the same crowd. Y'all must be in trouble, evidently. Okay, all righty. So, but it is a reality of the Christian life. When you joined the family of God, you got in a war. There's an enemy who's out to wreck you and ruin you and devastate your testimony any way he can. All right, and he does that through a lot of means. We're going to learn about that this week. Let me encourage you to come. Bring a notepad with you and a Bible and a pen. We're going to study that. Why is it some of these things seem to happen? Why is it? I'm going to even go out on a limb with you, okay? Why is it sometimes my car won't start when I desperately need it? I believe God is intimately involved in our lives. I mean, if he cares about the hairs on my head, he's got an easy job, right? But if he cares about a sparrow that falls to the ground, he must care about the details of our life. And, there have been times when I've actually had car trouble and I prayed and the car worked. Now, that could have been coincidence, but I gave God the credit for it. And I believe God works that way. I remember we had an old doctor in a church we used to be at, and he lost his keys. He was up in age, and he'd had polio when he was a boy, so he had a hard time. But when he began to look for his car keys, couldn't find them anywhere. It's in the middle of the day, and so he was in his front yard. And he said, "God, would you please help me? I got to get back. I got people waiting on me." He said, "I looked down right there with my car keys right there." And I believe God answers prayer. And I think sometimes Satan wants to discourage us and defeat us. Maybe you have trouble in your marriage. Maybe it's some financial problems. Maybe it's a problem of bitterness or unforgiveness or whatever it is. We're going to look for some help from God's Word about what is that all about and how do I deal with it. That's tonight at 6 o'clock. So let me encourage you to come for that, okay? Amen. Okay, thank you. All right, let's pray together. Father, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for the time we've already had together. Lord, I thank you for the children who remind us of how exciting church ought to be. When they saw children's church, they went running to there. And God, I pray for those leaders as they teach those little kids this morning that they'll know more about you when they left than when they got here. I pray the same thing for us. We want to hear from you. We need to hear from you. God, I pray for every life that's represented here. There may be some here who don't know you, some who've never entered in to salvation with you, to being restored, reconciled to what you made them to be in the first place. I ask you, Lord, that you would open their eyes this morning. For those of us who are part of the family already, would you encourage us and teach us and change us and make us more like Jesus? For it's in his name we pray. Amen? Amen. Okay, 1 Timothy chapter 4, beginning in verse 6. I think I said 4, but verse 6. Last week we looked at, and Paul was talking about false teachers. He said, watch out for false teachers. There are some who are falling away. Oh, there's a happy customer. Does anybody recognize? That's not somebody here, is it? Does anybody recognize that voice? There it is, right there. Hey, Dad, he said you was going to stay with you. All righty. Well, they're going outside with him. There he goes. All righty. Well, good. We're going to miss him in church, aren't we, Scott? All right. But anyhow, Paul said you got to watch out. There are false teachers out there. There are people who come up with the weirdest things. There are people who say, hey, you shouldn't eat that. You shouldn't go there. You shouldn't get married. You shouldn't. I mean, weird stuff. I heard about a guy this week who was watching, what's that outfit out west? TBN? Was it Trinity Broadcasting? And a preacher on there said, a lady had called in or written in, and she had a dog that was real sick. It was like a family to her, you know. And he said, would you put that dog's nose against the television screen right now? We're going to pray for that dog. Had I seen that, I'd have put my foot through that TV. I mean, is that idiotic or what? I mean, how crazy can it be? I hope that if I am, I'm going to enlighten you, okay? I hope you've never been foolish enough that when a preacher says, put your hand on the TV screen, that's our point of contact. That's not a point of contact, that's hogwash. God doesn't operate that way. And you don't need a handkerchief from somebody. You don't need to have somebody pray over a pillowcase for you. All right? Do you understand and realize you can go straight to God yourself? Amen. And do you realize I'm a pastor? I'm a professional Christian. All righty? And my prayer is no more potent than yours. I go through the same Son of God that you do. I walk on the same ground that you do. And yet there are people who say, Pastor, and I don't mind, I pray for people. I don't mind doing that at all. But what I'm saying is, you have power. I mean, you're one of his young'uns. Just like that one just squalling. Did Preston, what, he's back already. Oh, they tricked you. Took him out to the heat pump, didn't they? Did they take him out to the heat pump? We got a little guy in our children's church. He loves heat pumps. We don't know. I see a bright future for that kid, okay? You know? Huh? Woman? Yeah, that is true. Okay. All right. But you need to understand, God is all that we need, we have. And it's not a magic potion. It's not somewhere you go. It's God himself. And he wants, and Paul said, watch out. He said, as the days draw near to the end, they're going to get more and more and more of them. All right, with that in mind now, this is what he says in verse 6. He's talking to Timothy, and Timothy's one of the pastoral epistles. Timothy was a pastor of the church at Ephesus. He's writing to Timothy, but he's also writing to us. He's writing to the pastors, but he's also writing to the people, okay? And he says this, in pointing out these things, warning them about false teachers, watch out for people who come up with rules and regulations. That's not in the scripture. He said, in pointing these things, brothers, you will be a good servant of Jesus Christ, constantly nourished on the words of the faith, okay? I need to stop right there, okay? I've highlighted it in my Bible. Almost every time you see that little phrase, the faith, in the New Testament especially, it's not talking about having enough faith to believe in God. It's not that believing faith. The faith is almost always speaking about that whole package of orthodoxy, the principles and precepts of Scripture, of what God says. He said, and it's going to work in you. He says, constantly nourished on the words of the faith, of that which God has laid out as the way you're doing it. God has done those sort of things, okay? And of the sound doctrine which you've been following, but have nothing to do with worldly fables, fit, I like this phrase, fit only for old women, okay? If I said that at the house, I'd be a dead old man, okay? On the other hand, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. Instead of getting caught up in these conspiracy deals, instead of getting caught up in these little tricks and things that people say you ought to do if you want to enjoy the blessings of God, he said, get in on sound doctrine. He said, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. For bodily discipline is only for a little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things, since it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. It is a trustworthy statement, deserving full acceptance. You can take that to the bank, is what he's saying, okay? For it is for this we labor and strive, because we fixed our hope on the living God, who is the Savior of all men, especially of believers. Okay? Prescribe and teach these things. Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe. Until I come, give attention to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation, and to teaching. Do not neglect the spiritual gift that is within you, which was bestowed on you through prophetic utterances with the laying on of hands by the presbytery. Take pains with these things, be absorbed in them, so that your progress will be evident to all. Listen to verse 16. Pay close attention to yourself and to your teaching. Persevere in these things, for as you do this, you will ensure salvation both for yourself and for those who hear you. Okay, I want to start there. Can I do that? We're going to go back. There's so much richness here. We could spend the next month in this passage of Scripture, but we're not going to, okay? I want to just start at the last one. It sounds almost like he's saying everybody's going to be saved, doesn't it? He writes, look up in verse, where was that? I saw it a minute ago. Okay, in verse 10, he says, for this we labor and strive, because we fixed our hope on the living God, who is the Savior of all men, especially of believers. It's almost like he's the Savior of unbelievers. That's what it sounds like to you when you first read it. But we know that's not true, right? How do we know it's not true? A little bit louder. Because there's hell. Amen. Appreciate that word of encouragement. Okay. All right. And then in verse 16, he says, these things will ensure salvation both for yourself and those who hear you. And that helps to clear it up. All right. Now we know, listen, we know because one of the basic principles of biblical interpretation is that you take a verse that's clear to interpret that which is not clear. Okay? For example, there are folks who say that you are saved by the blood of Jesus Christ, but you have to live right in order to stay saved. Anybody know anybody believes like that? They do. I mean, there are people believe that your works either gain or lose you entrance into heaven. Now, I don't know about you. That just doesn't sit right with me. That's not what God's Word teaches, right? We are saved by the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ on the cross. The death that he died and the blood that he shed was put to the penalty of our sin so that we could be reconciled to God, right? Jesus teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, there's going to be a whole lot of folks who say to me in time, but didn't we cast out demons in your name? And didn't we preach in your name? And didn't we go on mission trips? Didn't we do religious stuff in your name? And he's going to say to them what? He said, I never knew you. That was all just you doing that stuff. He said, the way is wide and the gate is wide that leads to destruction. And many there are that enter in. But he said, the way is narrow and the gate is small and few there be that find it. Right? So he is saying, comparatively speaking, most of the people that we know are going to be lost. All right? This is grievous to say, but it's true in the words of Keisha Sayers. Most people are going to go to hell. And if I hear one more person say, I don't think God would send anybody to hell, not the God that I serve, God doesn't send anybody to hell. If you go to hell, it's because you have rejected his gift of salvation. He's paid the way. It's an interstate highway in there. Just get in on him and you're in there. It's not us. It's him. And if you go to hell, it's going to be because you say, I don't believe it, or I don't care, or that can't be right, or whatever. But if you reject him and his life and his death and his burial and his resurrection as the atonement for your sin, there is no other way. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I'm the life. And that's it. Right? Nod your head, yeah. So what is he saying here then, okay? I think verse 16 helps to clarify verse 10. He said, persevere in these things, for as you do this, you will ensure salvation both of yourself because you're walking in that truth. It's evidence that you've gotten in on what God's up to, right? He said, also for those who hear you. Now remember, what is Paul's Timothy? What in the world? What am I saying? Okay. Pam, could you come over and help me a little bit? Would you translate that for these people? I think if Pam starts signing my sermons, you know. What was Timothy's job? What did he do? What did he do in life? He was a pastor of the church, and he preached and taught these folks week after week, just like I do. That was his ministry. That's what God gave. That was his responsibility. He said, as you teach these things and as you live that life out, he said, you're just going to draw them in. And they're going to say, oh, that's what it says. That's the way it is. I'm going to go that way. Right? And so for those who've been redeemed, yes, it brings salvation. Now, the truth of the matter is, I'm going to go through this real quickly. The truth of the matter is, there is also benefit of the work of God in lost people. You ever thought about that? You say, what have you said? Make up your mind. All right, let me give you just three things real quick. First of all, there is a common grace that God gives to all his creation. I mean, God shows his goodness even to lost people. And you know how he shows it? By giving them life, by extending their life, by providing for them, by watching out over them sometime. You know what I'm saying? Now, when a person goes bad, it's not because God, that's it, you got on my list. Listen, when you choose to disobey God, you have the choice to choose if you want to, but you can't choose the consequences. Right? When you choose to become immoral, you're going to reap the consequences of immorality. When you choose bitterness over forgiveness, you're going to choose the fruit of bitterness. And on that list goes. But God has a common grace that basically you can enjoy just by being alive, okay? Secondly, is compassion. God loves lost people. He doesn't hate them. He's not against them. He loves them. For God so loved the world, everybody in the world, that he gave his one-of-a-kind son, that whosoever would believe in him wouldn't perish, but would have everlasting life. That's compassion. I mean, he loves that. And thirdly, he admonishes them to repent. In order for God to be just, what's the word just? When we say God's just, what's that mean? What's the word just mean? Fair. He always does the right thing. Always. Isn't it good, Emily, that you can believe? I don't understand this, but I know God's a just God. God does not do bad. Right? And because he is a just God, he has to give every one of his creation, humans of his creation, to come to salvation. And let me tell you how I came to salvation. I grew up in church. I could whoop some adults in what do they call the thing you used to do, the Bible verse deal. Yeah, I was good. It's 'cause and it wasn't because I loved Jesus. At that time I did. It's because you got a prize if you won, okay? And it wasn't salvation either, all right? But you know what? There came a time in my life when God got my attention and showed me that I was a sinner. That I did. And I was 20. And listen, I was 26 years old before I came to God. And I lived a reckless, terrible life. But I was enjoying the daylights out of it. Don't let somebody tell you that sin's miserable. Sin is wonderful for a season. All right? And the devil's in the process of killing, stealing, and destroying. But God brought me to a place where all that stuff came to an end, where people that I had known wouldn't have anything to do with me. And I realized I had offended the Holy God. I went to a Truth concert. For those of you who aren't old enough to remember, Truth was one of the first Christian contemporary singing groups that went around the country. And everything they sang and everything Roger Breland said was like he's talking to me. And God showed me that I had offended him, that I had sinned, and I was separated from him. And there was nothing I could do about it except come to him. And about 2 o'clock in the morning after that concert, I was in a little efficiency apartment. I crawled out of my bed and got on my knees and said, God, I am sorry. Would you forgive me? And God saved my soul. But he offered it up and then gave me a sense to accept it. And ain't God good? And so he's not saying everybody's going to be saved. No, those who reject God will spend eternity in hell with all those who reject God. And that's not God's choice. That's their choice. You have the choice. All right. So anyway, meanwhile, back in 1 Timothy 4. Okay. So let's dig in now and see what God has to say for us the rest of the time. All right. Remember that Paul's talking. Let me read verses 1, 2, and 3 to you of chapter 4. The Spirit explicitly says that in later times, some will fall away from the faith, paying attention to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons, by means of the hypocrisy of liars seared in their own conscience, as with a branding iron. Men who forbid marriage and advocate abstaining from foods which God has created to be gratefully shared by those who believe and know the truth. All right. Now, Paul says in verse 6, that's what he said. And in light of that, he says this, in pointing these things and pointing out these things to the brothers, you will be a good servant of Jesus Christ, he tells Timothy, okay? That's what you ought to do as a shepherd of the flock of God. Do you all know who Joel Osteen is? Do you know what's that other guy who had the Crystal Cathedral? What's that fellow's name? He's Robert Schuller. Both those guys said, I will never preach against sin again. It disturbs too many people. It offends too many people. Brothers and sisters, sin's what got us in the mess. Flee from those guys. Run from those guys. Now, let me tell you, I just called 2 names out on live stream. Pam, did you hear that? Shame on me. Let me tell you what, they're honest. There are preachers who won't say, don't listen to this bird over here. He's heretical. And there are Christians, professing Christians, who get mad if a preacher says, names your favorite preacher who just happens to be a false teacher. And so they get mad and say, what? He's been leading me astray? What? He's not saying what God says? I believe, and God's word teaches, it is the responsibility of a pastor teacher, of an under shepherd of the flock of God, to warn you. It's danger. Get away from there. Run. Don't take it. Send that Bible back. Amen. I had somebody say just the other day, I wish you'd call more names out. I want to be aware of who they are. And they're sneaky. I mean, they're very persuasive and convincing. I mean, when the devil, we'll see tonight with spiritual, the devil doesn't come with a pitchfork and a red tail and horns. He is an angel of light. He's not scary. He's not spooky. Man, he's attractive. He's winsome. He's charismatic. I'm not talking about theology. He's charming. And if you're not careful, you'll get sucked into it. The first church I ever pastored, I was meaner then than I am now, really. I can't believe it. Sorry. And I was on fire. You remember that, Pam? And anyhow, I don't know if I led him, but anyhow, I baptized this guy. Got saved, and he was probably in his 20s, I guess, at that time, wasn't he, Pam? Something like that. And you know who I'm talking about? Okay, not yet. All right, and anyhow, he just caught fire. Matter of fact, he was one of the first guys I ever baptized as a pastor, and people are different. You know, most people they walk off like this here, you know. And anyhow, but he didn't. He put my bear hug on me and got me soaking wet in my suit and everything. You know, man, I got cleansed that day. All right, but it was about a month later after he got saved and after the pastor had baptized him. He came up and he said, Pastor, look what I got the other day. He opened up this Bible. This is great, about that thick Bible. And on the front page had a picture of Oral and Evelyn Roberts. Oh, you little crazy one. Had you been listening to me? No. I went, well, I was trying to behave myself. And I thought, oh, man. But it wasn't very long before God opened up his eyes and the Holy Spirit said, don't trust that guy. Oh, I've called another name, Pam. I'm getting better and better. All right. But the fact of the matter is, I do believe that it's the role of a shepherd to sound the warning when it needs to be sounded. We have some mealy-mouthed, mamby-pamby, milquetoast preachers. They're afraid. They're afraid to say, thus saith the Lord. We had a guy one time who was a teacher, and he would come to the point, he had mastered the art of almost saying something. He would say, you know, I such and such and so, and ooh, I better not say that. Or if he slipped and said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I want to say, yeah, you should. Keep going, don't stop now. I don't know about you, but if I'm going wrong, I want some godly person to say, don't walk that way. That's nothing but heartache and headache. I mean, isn't that the role of a shepherd? Now, I know we're supposed to be nice. You see the shape of our country? I believe a big portion of that's our fault. Preachers aren't preaching, thus saith the Lord. They're not saying, you got to watch out. There's snakes out there. Watch out. That's not okay. You don't have to put your dog's face in the TV. Right? So anyway, Paul said, he said in verse 6, he said, in pointing these things out, you'll be a good servant of Christ. All right? And I love the Phillips paraphrase. You know what it says? You'll be doing your duty as Christ's minister if you remind your church members of these things, that's false teaching, And you will show yourself as one who owes his strength to the truth of the faith, and he has absorbed and the sound teaching that he's followed. And all God's young and said, amen? I'm going to go ahead and, okay. All right, then we go to verse 7. That's all I got to say about that, Colton, okay? Take a breath. All right, you ready? All right, verse 7, he said, but have nothing to do with worldly fables fit only for old women. On the other hand, don't get caught up. Don't get caught up in some of the stupid stuff that's going around. I had a former church member, not this church, but another church I pastored, and I ran into him at Walmart parking lot. You can run into anything at anybody at Walmart parking lot. And he comes, hey, Stan, hey, and it's been several years since. He said, you know what I've gotten into now? I said, what did you get into now? He said, did you know that numbers in the Bible means all kinds of stuff? And did you know that this number's that and this number's that? And if you get these numbers together, and this right here, Henry Kissinger was a such and such, and on it goes. And he's come up with this whole complicated issue about every number in the Bible means something. I want to say, what? Is that all you got to study is something like that? How about the grace of God? How about the forgiveness of God? How about going out and telling somebody Jesus saves? Instead, he's cooped up in a house in front of his TV watching some goofball out of Dallas, Texas say, and the number 17. You don't want those together. That's not good news. He said, don't listen to that stupid stuff. But instead, on the other hand, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. Concentrate on living a godly life. It's not that complicated, right? If God says do it, do it. If God says don't. It's just that easy, okay? All right. You remember in verse 3 when he said there are those who say don't get married, those who say eat this kind of food. He said that's not going to get anywhere, all right? And then that's not all for number 12. Verse 12. Verse 12, all right? Paul says, let no one look down on. See, Timothy was a young guy. He said, don't let anybody look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself and be an example to those others. Concentrate on that, whatever's true and honorable, right, and pure, and right. That's what he says to do. And by the way, we got some young folks here. I'm Sharon. You're like me. You're not. Okay. I'm sorry. I looked right at Sharon when I said I got some young folks here. If you're young, you know who you are. Is that right, Lily? Okay. All right. You know what I'm saying? Don't let anybody look down on your youth. I've known some super godly young people who know God and are serious about God. We need more and more and more youth in this church. You know, one of the reasons why is because they dream and they believe and they have the energy and the abandon to just go on and do it. When you get old like us, well, I remember I used to do that way myself. I don't want to rust away. I want to burn out, don't you? I want to be busy about the work when God comes and calls me home. And I want people to chant, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we give here? Why don't we whatever? I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. Amen? Get in on it. And that's one thing about youth is if you just say God says this, they just, okay, let's do it. Why can't we do it? Move a mountain? I think we can do that. Right? He said, don't let them look down on youth. And don't you ever look down on youth, by the way, while you're at it, okay? All right. Anyway, okay. So then in verse 13 he says, now until I come, give attention to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation and to teaching. One of the translations says that perfect. It says this, read the text. He's talking to Timothy, the preacher. He said, read the text, explain the text, and give application to the text. That's what will happen in church. Is that right, Emily? Let me tell you, you would be stunned. We may send some missionaries out to some churches and come and give us a report. I've done a little bit of that in my time. It is shocking at some of the stuff that people call church. It is unbelievable at some of the sermons that are preached in this area and on TV and on the radio and on the internet. So what? Here's what happens. We come to the place where we're not careful to keep the main thing. And we get off in tangents. We get off in little side issues, and we go to seed on that. It's just Jesus. Amen? He says, listen, major on the Word of God. And that's what, I think you do. I hope you come to Providence because you want to hear God's Word preached and explained and give some application to it. We do it Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. I mean, don't you want to know that? Isn't that what you want to know when you come to church? What is that? What's God's Word say about that? What does that mean? How do I put it into practice? That's what he tells. He said, Timothy, you be careful to do that, all right? And I love verse 14. He said, Timothy, do not neglect the spiritual gift within you. Now, we don't have time to get into spiritual gifts, but you can find most of them listed in Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12. Okay? The motivational gifts are in Romans 12. It's giving, serving, leading, preaching, teaching, encouraging, and things like that. And administration. All right? He said, you've been given a spiritual gift, Timothy. Just so you know, how many of you all say, I am born again, I know it? Okay, most of you here. If you've been born again, God has put in you a spiritual gift. And it's going to be motivated by about those 7 things, all right? Giving, teaching, preaching, administration, serving, those kind of things. I like the giving folks myself. I like to hang around them. I've got a need. I've got a real good need. Know what I'm saying? And you can spot it. You know how you spot people's spiritual gift? Just watch them. They play it out. A person who has the gift of service, the spiritual empowerment of service, they just serve. You don't have to tell them. I mean, they'll find some way to serve. There are folks here who have that. Let me tell you, here's what they do. Church is over. The rest of us are laughing and cutting up and hollering, having a real good time, talking about what we're going to do. And this person with service goes, oh, man, somebody left these papers over here. Just get that right there. And they're straight. Oh, yeah, that's a pretty good show. They're just cleaning up or fixing up or helping somebody. Or you don't have to say, would you mind walking David Gibbs out to the car with an umbrella? They'll say, I got an umbrella. Let me get it for you. I mean, they just look for ways to serve. And they're God Spirit motivated to serve or to give. We have people in this church that say, hey, I like to give some. Anybody that has a need? That's the gift of giving. And that's a great gift. The gift of preaching, the gift of... Have you ever seen like 5 preachers preach? And out of that 5, maybe 2 of them were really good. The other 2 just kind of killed the time. What's the difference in those guys? Those 2 have the gift of preaching. They read the text, explain the text, and apply the text. You go, yeah, that's it. I get it. And he says, Tim, don't neglect that spiritual gift that's in you. He said, that's God-given, okay? All right. And then he says, we're almost done now, in verse 16. And he said, now pay close attention to yourself and to your teaching and all these things. For as you do this, you will ensure salvation both for yourself and those who... And then we looked at it at the very front, okay? And so, here's what I want you to see. The Christian life is not mystical. I'm going to step on a limb and say this and hope I don't get in trouble. Joel, can you close your ears just a minute? Just both of them if you don't. Just close his good ear. All right? The Christian life really is simple when you let it be simple. It's only as we complex it, make it complex by adding the junk to it. Do you know what you do? You just follow God's word. Okay, what does God's word say about immorality? What does God's word say about immorality? Get somebody tell me what it says. Say it again, Pam. Flee, like bugs. F-L-E-E. Yeah. All right, let's see here. Benny, come up here a minute. Come up here, Ben Sherritt. Yeah, man. Ben does the best illustration of anybody you've ever seen. This right here, okay? It's not repentance, though, Ben. I've got another one for you. I'll pay for this after a while. Okay, my son-in-law, Ben Sherritt. Summer's husband. Don't get cocky. Okay, can you give us an illustration of fleeing? Here it comes. Ready? You made me just... All right. Hey, that's it, though. Seriously, that's it. Run from it. Run from it. You don't hear this anywhere in our time. Immorality is a sin against your body. If you're married, it's against your mate. It's against your family. It's against God. Run from immorality. You know what we're taught? If you listen to out there, it's stupid not to be immoral. Why would you remain a virgin until you got married? You're laughed at. You're made fun of. You're called stupid. But God says there's a premium on that. And if you watch TV programs and movies and stuff, it is now, even the Hallmark movies, Pam, close your ears. It's no longer now a matter of, let's get married and have a family. It's like, let's just move in together. And we're bragging about how the divorce rate in America has gone down. You know why the divorce rate's gone down? Because people aren't getting married like they used to, just moving in together. Sexual sin is wrong.
Amen.
Say it again.
It ought not to be.
It shouldn't be wrong? Oh, it shouldn't be. Okay. Velma scared me there for a minute. I thought Velma was voting against it there for a minute. I don't know. I kind of like it myself. You might say she came up a little short on that one. Okay. But it is wrong. You know what? I mean, why can't, as believers, we say, I gave my life and my body to Jesus. I don't do that kind of stuff. Let me tell you why we don't. Because the pressure is everywhere. You will be ostracized. You'll be made fun of. You'll be a laughing stock if you just say, as for me, I can become like you just anytime I want to. Except for like virgins, but you can never become like me again if I'm a virgin, right? And it used to be that gift was a gift you gave to your husband or your wife. And there was pride in that stuff. But now you're wrong if you do that. But the scripture says in the last days, those things which are wrong will be called right. Those things which are right will be called right. And that's where we are today. But it's wrong. Flee. Is that right, Ben? Flee immorality. Run from it. Drunkenness is wrong. I encourage you to just stay away from alcohol altogether. You don't need it. You can live without wine. If you're a pastor, there's been enough wine to kill you. W-H-I-N-E. I have more whiny than I know, okay? You know what I'm saying? But stay away from it. It's a poor witness, a poor testimony. The lost folks are watching you, and when you imbibe in what they imbibe, there's no difference. I'm kind of like them. And for heaven's sake, that's true of hard liquor and stuff. But even as I see that, I see faith eyes rolling. You're wrong. God's word says it's wrong. Christians ought not to do that. Gossip is wrong. Unforgiveness is wrong. Prayerlessness is wrong. And what we have to do, if we're going to know God the way we want to know Him and the way He made us to know Him, you're going to have to obey what He says. You can't flirt with sin without getting burned. It will happen every time. If you have to ask, is there anything really wrong with? You ought to know right then, must be something wrong with it. See, part of the office work of the Holy Spirit is to convict you of sin and to give you discernment concerning those things. And if you're wrestling with, well, is that right or not? That's the Spirit of God in you saying, no, it ain't right. But if you're like I used to do, you're trying to find a little loophole to get down and go in there. Why can't we say, how much like God can I be and still get along in this world? But instead, many of the folks I know say, how much like the world can I be and still call myself a Christian? I don't know about you, but I want to run toward Him. Don't you want that? That's what Paul's telling Timothy. He said, Timothy, you are a walking, talking example of a child of the living God. Live like it. Teach like it. Be like it. That's for pastors, right? Not only. No, it's for us. Here's the other key that I won't let you go. All right? The other key is this. You are a teacher of how God is and who God is. Do you understand that? You're a teacher as well. And some people, you might even be a preacher. Because there are folks who know that you say you love God and you belong to Jesus, and they're watching how you live. And when you live a milquetoast Christian life, what you're saying is just another hypocrite. Your children are watching you more than they're listening to you. It's tax time again. What's God's word say about paying taxes? Who said that? Oh, said Caesar, what do you mean by that? Say it again. Say it again, Mark. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's and to God what's God. And when you cheat on your taxes, and I don't like taxes either, in case you wonder, okay? But your kids hear you talking about, well, maybe we won't, whatever. They hear that louder than what you're saying. It's okay to cheat on your taxes. It's okay to disobey what God says about Caesar and the government and God. Right? Or if you say, and I'm preaching to the choir right now, if you just say, oh man, I don't know. It's going to be nice after today. Let's just don't go to church today. We'll go to the lake, or we'll go to the whatever. We'll go for whatever it is. What you're saying to your children is, church, you ought to go to church, but it's not the most important thing. I can't think of enough people, even in this room, but certainly in my ministry, who over the years have said this very statement. When I was growing up, it wasn't a question of were we going to church. The question was what time we leaving. Isn't that right? And now the common question is, do we have to go to church this morning? Are we But when you make church second, third, or fourth down the list, you're saying to those around you and to your children, your grandchildren, well, church is a good thing, but it's not the best thing. It's not the most important thing. See, we're teaching. That's why he said, Timothy, live out what you've been teaching so they can see it, say that. By the way, did you all know I'm a pastor? Did y'all know that? I know it's hard to believe. Sometimes I don't believe it, all right? And we live in a neighborhood where we got a few Christians in our neighborhood. Is your dad saved, Pam? I think he is, isn't he? you know what I'm saying? But we got some folks who profess to be Christian, and probably some of them probably are. All right? But, you know, they watch us. They watch us. And if they see the preacher doing something he shouldn't be doing, there are things I don't do, not because I think it's wrong, but because I have a witness to think of. I don't want somebody to say, well, we lived next door to a preacher one time, man. He'd get drunk as a skunk on Sunday. He's out there washing his car on Sunday. Yikes. He mowed his yard. We were doing a live stream, remember that? And I got back, and it took us a while to get set for light, especially if we were doing it outside. You had to pick the right light and all that kind of stuff. And so we spent, Pam, about an hour and a half getting everything out there and all the junk to do it in the backyard. We have a pretty backyard. It's got a little woods. So about 10 minutes until I started, and he mowed for about 30 minutes. I thought, he stopped. Okay, Pam, let's try it again. Then he went, and started tilling on Sunday. Now, I don't think he's a Christian. Doesn't make it. But what I'm saying is, lost people believe that Christians are different. They do. They really believe. They think it's wrong for Christians to smoke. Did you know that? They think it's wrong for Christians to chew tobacco. They think it's wrong for Christians to cuss or to drink. They just believe that. And when you do those things, you're confirming they're wrong. No, that's okay. You can be a Christian, be just like the pagans if you want to. Now, I know what you're thinking. I can see it in your mugs. Okay? If you got to go home and mow your yard, more power to you. I hope your lawnmower blows up. Don't you, Kevin? You might. The Lord's good, isn't he? The Lord's good. Look at Ben. But Ben will come by and mow your yard for a small fee. Okay. Yes, he did. But I mean, I know that sounds silly, but there are people who put stock in that. And I don't as much as I used. I used to love wash my car, wax it, stuff like that before all my kids came on and got put their noses against the window and stuff. It really wasn't. It wasn't work for me. I enjoyed doing it. I mean, I'd take all day just about fixing, doing stuff like that. But when I became a Christian, when I became a pastor, I didn't do that anymore. Not because I thought it was wrong, not because it was work to me, but because I knew the neighbors thought you ought not to work on Sunday. I know what you're thinking because I can hear it all the way up here. Here's all I ask you to do, whether it's drinking wine or whatever you drink or whatever you're doing or being or working on Sunday or whatever. Let me encourage you to go before God. Just go before God and say, God, is that old guy right? Or is that silly? And here's the main cog in it. It's not that mowing your yard's bad. For some of you, mowing's almost therapy. Listen, you can't hear anybody or anything when you mow it. Do you know that? Honey, could you come here a minute? I heard her, but I ain't. Right? Or the kids, hey, Dad, can you do? You said there's a little bit of value to that, right? I saw you eating in your yard the other day. But what Sunday was it? Okay. But it's those little things like that. Watch your language. Amen. You know, and pardon my French is not saying I'm in wrong. I'm sorry, you forgive me, all right? It lets you off the hook a little bit. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth. Isn't that what God's word says? and cuss words are unwholesome. Gossip is unwholesome. Rumors are unwholesome. And Paul's telling Timothy, he said, Timothy, guard yourself. People are watching you. I'm telling you, and me too, watch yourself. People are watching, people are listening, and people are drawing opinions about what Christianity is. And this world, our country, desperately needs to see real, born-again, sold-out followers of Jesus Christ who live differently, not because we're weird, but because we live to a different standard. And God's made it so easy to do that. I mean, you'll stick out like a sore thumb if you quit doing some things you're doing. I would too, you know what I'm saying? And so let me encourage you, as Paul admonished Timothy, hey, you keep on pressing on and you guard yourself because other folks are watching and listening. And the shepherds, that's one of your sheep there, isn't it? Again, you got a whole row of sheep, right? That's like sheep to you. You lead them in such a way that when they grow up, they say, I want to be like mom and dad. The pressure on that. In church, we get them about, at max, 3 hours a week. That's if you come Sunday night, Wednesday night. All the rest of the world's out there in the school system and on the job site and things like that. And it's really hard if this is all they get to make a difference because they're bombarded into ignoring what God says. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for